In the heart of northern India, nestled amidst lush green fields and dense forests, lay the village of Bhavipur. This quaint and quiet village, with its narrow winding lanes and rustic houses, seemed like a paradise on earth. Yet, behind its serene facade, Bhavipur harbored a dark and chilling secret. A secret that would send shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to uncover it. The villagers of Bhavipur were a superstitious lot, and for good reason. They believed in the presence of spirits and the supernatural, and among these spirits, none was more feared than the Chudail. The Chudail was a vengeful ghost, said to be the spirit of a woman who had died a tragic and violent death. Her story was whispered in hushed tones around bonfires and recounted as a warning to those who dared to wander the roads at night. The legend of the Chudail began many years ago with a woman named Asha. Asha was known throughout the village for her beauty and kindness. She had long, flowing hair and eyes that sparkled like stars. Her laughter was like music, and her smile could light up the darkest of days. She was loved by all, but none more so than her husband Vikram. Vikram and Asha were deeply in love, their bond unbreakable. They dreamed of a future together, filled with happiness and children. However, fate had a cruel plan in store for them. One fateful night, as Asha was returning home from a visit to her parents' house, she was ambushed by a group of men. These men, driven by their own dark desires, attacked her with a brutality that defied humanity. Asha fought valiantly, but she was no match for their savagery. They left her broken and bleeding on the side of the road, her cries for help fading into the night. By the time Vikram and the villagers found her, it was too late. Asha died in Vikram's arms, her beautiful eyes now vacant and lifeless. The village mourned her loss, but none more so than Vikram. Grief-stricken and consumed by anger, he swore to avenge his beloved's death. But before he could, strange things began to happen in Bhavipur. People reported seeing a ghostly figure wandering the roads at night, her long hair flowing behind her and her anklets tinkling eerily. Those who saw her spoke of her reversed feet and her ability to transform from a beautiful woman to a hideous ghoul. The villagers soon realized that the spirit of Asha had returned, transformed into the dreaded Chudail. She was no longer the kind and loving woman they had known. She had become a vengeful spirit, driven by an insatiable thirst for revenge. The men who had wronged her met gruesome ends, their bodies found mutilated and their faces twisted in terror. The legend of the Chudail grew, and soon no one in Bhavipur dared to venture out after dark. The once bustling village streets became deserted as the sun set, and an air of fear and foreboding settled over the village. Vikram, too, was not spared from the Chudail's wrath. One night, he heard the familiar tinkling of anklets outside his house. Desperate to see his beloved one last time, he stepped outside. There she was, standing in the moonlight, her beauty as ethereal as ever. Vikram's heart ached as he reached out to her, but as he did, her face twisted into a grotesque mask of rage. She let out a blood-curdling scream, and Vikram's screams soon followed. The next morning, his lifeless body was found, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. The villagers were now convinced that the Chudail's wrath was unstoppable. They held rituals and prayers to appease her spirit, but nothing seemed to work. The Chudail continued to haunt the village, her presence a constant reminder of the tragedy that had befallen Asha. Years passed, and the legend of the Chudail became ingrained in the village's lore. Parents warned their children never to wander out at night, and travelers avoided the roads near Bhavipur. Yet, despite the fear, life went on, and the village adapted to its new reality. One summer, a young man named Rajesh arrived in Bhavipur. He was an outsider, a city dweller who had come to the village seeking solace and a break from the chaos of urban life. Rajesh was a curious and adventurous soul, always eager to explore and discover new places. He had heard the stories of the Chudail, but like many city folks, he dismissed them as mere folklore. Rajesh rented a small cottage on the outskirts of the village, near the edge of the forest. The villagers welcomed him with open arms, though they were quick to warn him about the Chudail. Rajesh listened politely, but paid little heed to their warnings. He was more interested in the natural beauty of the village and spent his days wandering the fields and forests, sketching and taking photographs. One evening, as the sun began to set, Rajesh found himself deep in the forest, captivated by the beauty of the landscape. He realized too late that he had lost track of time. The shadows grew longer, and the forest became eerily quiet. Rajesh felt a chill run down his spine as he remembered the villagers' warnings. Determined not to let fear get the better of him, Rajesh started to make his way back to the village. The path was unfamiliar in the dim light, and he soon found himself disoriented. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees casting long, menacing shadows. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over him. As he walked, Rajesh heard a faint sound behind him, the tinkling of anklets. His heart began to race, and he quickened his pace. The sound grew louder, more insistent, and he could feel a presence following him. Panic set in, and Rajesh broke into a run, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He stumbled out of the forest and onto the road, but the sound of the anklets followed him. Desperation gripped him as he looked around, searching for any sign of life. The village was still some distance away, and there were no houses nearby. Rajesh stopped to catch his breath, hoping the presence would vanish. But as he turned around, he saw her, a beautiful woman standing in the middle of the road, her hair flowing behind her and her eyes fixed on him. Rajesh felt a strange mix of fear and fascination. Despite his terror, he couldn't help but be drawn to her. The woman smiled and beckoned him to come closer. Rajesh, entranced by her beauty, took a step forward. But then he noticed her feet. They were facing the wrong direction. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. This was the Chudail. Rajesh tried to run, but his legs felt like lead. The Chudail's smile widened into a sinister grin, and she let out a scream that pierced the night. Rajesh's own scream followed, echoing through the forest. His vision blurred, and the world around him faded into darkness. The next morning, the villagers found Rajesh's body on the road. His face was twisted in an expression of sheer terror, his eyes wide open as if he had seen something unimaginable. The village mourned the loss of the young man, and the legend of the Chudail grew even stronger. Leave a like and a comment if you want to hear part 2 of the Chudail story.